Shana Tova. Some of you know the parable. A storm is coming. The radios, the television, the newspapers, Facebook, and Instagram are all filled with reports of the magnitude of the storm and the evacuation orders. Neighbors knock on a friend's door to check on him. John responds, he is a man of faith. He does not need to evacuate. God will save him. The storm comes with record high flooding. Emergency rescue crews come with a boat, and then even a helicopter as John is forced onto his roof. They order him, "Get in the basket." "No thanks," says John. "I'm a man of faith. God will rescue me." The waters rise. The microphone is turned on. And John is carried away. Shocked at his death, he arrives in the world to come and demands an audience with God because he is quite angry and quite offended at his doom. God agrees to meet with him and says, "What grieves you, my son? I had faith in you, God. I had faith that you would save me, but you let me drown. How could you do that?" "My son," answers God, "I sent you weather reports, evacuation orders, neighbors to check on you, a boat and a helicopter. What more did you want?" For some of us, this story is all too familiar. The realization, too late, that our life was filled with opportunities, pathways that were laid at our feet that would have been awesome to walk. But we didn't see them at the time, and we couldn't see them at the time because we were too busy with other plans, with other ideas, with thinking that we knew something better, with rushing forward with whatever we thought was the greater truth, the bigger item of immediate importance. At Shabbat morning services, and tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact, we will rise at the third paragraph of the Mi Chamocha prayer, calling God our rock and asking God to kuma, to rise up and come to the aid of our people Israel. Nearly every Saturday morning, I remind our community, some of you may have been here once or twice on a Saturday morning. You should try it, it's really nice. I remind our community that really God has already done God's kuma'ing. God has already done God's rising up and done God's part. God has sent the weather reports, the neighbors, the boat, and the helicopter. God has given us our gift of Torah, along with generations of commentators, along with our lives, our beautiful brains, our souls, our invitation, really an obligation to contribute our own ideas to this ongoing dialogue as we bring ancient wisdom, meet it with modern sensibilities, put them in direct contact with each other, adding more and more chapters to the corpus of Jewish learning. This is what God has given us already. But we also have a role in the raising up of ourselves and our people. We actually have to open the book, and we have to show up. We have to do the study to gain the wisdom. We have to participate in the conversation and embrace the practices that have sustained our people for thousands of years. Buying a Pilates membership without going to the classes doesn't help. I hear the laughter. We see each other. It's okay. I'm here for you. I want to take a moment of radical transparency. As a rabbi, as your rabbi, and as a friend to so many people in this room, and as a human being on this planet, I struggled this year with what I wanted to say tonight. If there's one thing I do know, I know that we are entering 5786 with heavy hearts. I could easily repeat my sermon from last year, and it is just as relevant this year, Rabbi Benj and I checked. Avoid the pull to political extremism because it is dangerous. Stop watching so much social media and stop watching our 24-hour news cycle. It's not good for you. And sadly, I have to report right now that in spite of my world-changing sermon of last year, The world has continued with all of these things, and it sadly only seems to have gotten worse since then, which I actually wouldn't have thought possible at the time. This year, however, we have witnessed political violence directed to people on the left and people on the right, and heated rhetoric following each incident, which avoids the real culprit in every single case. That we are living in a time when anger has turned into a virtue, where radicalization online is rampant and unchecked, where calls for violence are celebrated and venerated, and where access to weapons is incredibly easy, and where a lack of mental health care, a lack of accountability for social media algorithms, and a lack of funding and staffing for federal and local law enforcement to monitor and address all of these issues are creating a perfect storm, with all indications being that we can anticipate this will only continue to increase. This is on top of 2 years of war, hostages still waiting for redemption, families still waiting to receive their loved ones' remains so they can bury their beloved dead, and so much destruction and suffering in Israel and Gaza because of Hamas and their evil designs. And this is on top of a global pandemic that brought our world to its knees and from which some industries are only still recovering. And this is on top of our societal allowance of the building of a world where we dehumanize people with whom we disagree. The slope between dehumanization and demonization is short and perilously slippery. Several decades ago, 24-hour news became a thing, and there's only so much airtime that can be filled covering the few events in the world people have decided are worthy of news coverage. News directors instead decided to fill the rest of the time with deep analysis commentators and shallow analysis mudslingers. Guess which one wound up getting more airtime? The biggest problem is that it becomes so familiar, has become so familiar, and so comfortable that it actually feels virtuous when we see the mudslinging and it confirms our bias. We stop realizing we have left the world of information and news and have entered into the world of propaganda and radicalization. And unfortunately, we love it. We love it, or the algorithms wouldn't feed them to us and the algorithms wouldn't work. The algorithms feed us more and more sensationalized stories, more and more radical stories, because we love these images, and it knows we love the images because the grosser they get, the more we watch them, the more we click on them, and the more we respond. This is how the algorithms work. These stories, these talking heads, these videos that affirm our bias, they tell us that now because of the video's ever-growing anger, it is not only justified, but it is actually a sign of our virtue. And we keep coming back to the well for more and more and more because anger is an amazing drug. For too many of us, we have been living on the high of this drug for the last number of years. And although we may think it's a sign of our decency, our righteousness, and our vitality, it is actually a poison destroying us and our community. It is destroying our families. It is destroying our families, our society, and our world from within. But here we are, on the precipice of this new year. And so what do we say tonight? What do we dream of tonight? What can I, as your rabbi, offer you in the way of hope tonight? I want to offer us the words of Torah that give us our forecast, our neighbors, our first responders, so we don't wind up where most of us are, which is standing on the roof, feeling like unbalanced fiddlers watching the floodwaters rise. Maybe that's just me. The answer for this moment has already been provided by God. And now we just need to rise to the occasion and to meet God halfway. Throughout these high holidays, Rabbi Benj and I will be offering a multitude of pathways of kuma'ing, if you will, of rising up. That's some good Heblish for you there, kuma'ing. Of rising up and doing what we can to meet this moment and greet this new year with intentionality. For tonight, we're going to begin with the beginning of our story as a nation and one of our initial principles right out of the gate, out of Egypt. As our ancestors leave Egypt and experience one of the first of many emotional and existential crises, we were a delicate people, that we will face on our journey to Israel. Guess what? We freaked out when there were no snacks. God reassures us, don't worry, there will be food for you. Anyone ever led a tour? Anyone ever been on a group tour? What do you need to have on the bus, Rabbi Lawson? Snacks. This is what we learned from leaving Egypt. Our ancestors freaked out. Where will the food come from? God reassures them, there will be enough food to eat, you guys, I promise. There's this amazing stuff called manna. You're going to love it. They're told that they can gather manna every day, but only to take as much as they'll need, because whatever's left over will spoil overnight. But a miracle occurs each Friday, when they're commanded to gather a double portion that will last them through Shabbat. Unlike weekday manna, the Shabbat manna is a double portion, and it will not spoil, and it will sustain them through that second day. This is why the tradition is to have 2 challah loaves on Shabbat. It's not just to shamor Shabbat and to zachor Shabbat, to guard Shabbat and to remember Shabbat. It's to remember that we were told to have a double portion. It is a reminder of the doubling of our blessings and our bounty on the Sabbath, a promise that God has given us enough and that we can take the day to not gather, but to restore ourselves, our families, and our community. Everything we need to know and learn for 5786 is right here in this moment of Exodus, chapter 16. As I look at our community on this beautiful new year, I see a sea of good souls and beautiful human beings. But I also see and know that I look at a beautiful group of people with heavy hearts and world weariness. I see people carrying the same worries that I have. Will our children be okay? How can we protect them in a world where Jew hatred has once again become a virtue? Will our country be okay when political violence seems to be escalating and normalizing? Will our country be okay when we hear people dehumanizing others for their political beliefs on a daily basis without thinking twice and denigrating each other on social media in ways that I know they never would in person? The list of worries is long and it is real. But when we spend our days with the news and on social media and the algorithms that feed us angry and salacious content to keep us scrolling, we are no different than we were as slaves in Egypt. People living in a perpetual state of despair and hunger, unable to serve ourselves, each other, or God, crying out for deliverance, but unable to see it or accept it when it actually does come. And the worry is real. And the worry is just. Ezra Klein recently put it succinctly. He summarized the political violence of the last few years. The plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. The storming of the Capitol and pipe bombs left at the RNC and the DNC. The break-in to kidnap Nancy Pelosi and the brutal violence unleashed on Paul Pelosi. Multiple assassination attempts against President Trump. The assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband. And the shooting of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Luigi Mangione's assassination of Brian Thompson. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk. In Pirkei Avot, our rabbis teach mitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera. One mitzvah leads to another, and one transgression leads to another. As we live through this moment of growing political violence, of vitriol as virtue, of justifying harm against those with whom we disagree, while decrying our opponent's silence on the harm done to those with whom we do agree, I am asking us now, as we begin this new year, to address the spiritual malaise and despair by recognizing that we are in the same kind of vicious cycle as a dog chasing its tail. The only outcome and result that we can expect is more of the same on a national and personal level. It is a dangerous depletion of the soul and a depletion of our hope that can destroy an entire generation. This is the same depletion of the soul and depletion of the hope that fills the cries of our ancient Israelite ancestors, who, even after having been delivered and liberated from slavery in Egypt, cannot see that they are living a life of freedom and dignity, and they cry out to God in despair, unable to trust anything that is in front of them. This is the same depletion of the soul and depletion of hope that fills our own hearts and our own minds when we are living in a time when we have more rights and more freedoms than Jews at any other time in history, and all we feel at this moment is our fear, our powerlessness, and our existential worry. But the good news is, our beautiful Jewish tradition answers us with the wisdom that we have already talked about from Exodus chapter 16. Focus instead on this spiritual depletion. Focus instead on nourishing yourself with the bounty that God is providing you every single day. It is time for us to begin a practice of going out and collecting our manna, because God is still providing it, and it will sustain us every single day. And then on Friday, we are supposed to get ourselves ready to go out and collect a double portion so that we will be prepared and can observe Shabbat. I'm going to do a quick survey of the room. Is everyone ready to participate? Yes. Warm up your hands just like you're a kid getting ready to do the V'ahavta. Raise your hand if you begin every morning, first thing, with a prayer or meditation practice of daily gratitude in which you take time at the start of the day, rising up to another day of life, to acknowledge I am alive and thank you, God, the universe, sheer dumb luck, whatever theology you hold, that's up to you, and I'm not talking about it tonight, that you have been given another day of life. And then begin your day with a counting of your blessings. Raise your hand if that's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning. Now look around the room and count the hands. Exactly. There are not enough hands in the room up. Now I'm going to ask you to be brave and honest. You ready? Raise your hand if your day begins with some morning doom scrolling on your phone and your social media, as you check in with Instagram or Facebook to see what daily trash the world has for you on this bright, beautiful morning, which new videos YouTube has loaded up for you that feed your anger and get you out of bed really revved up and irritated. Let's see those hands. Thank you, honest people. I expect that there should be a lot more hands up in the room, but I will forgive the shyness because it is the season of repentance. We have a choice every single morning and every single hour of the day how we're going to spend it. Are we going to collect the manna that God has provided us to nourish our bodies and our souls, or are we going to begin feeding the anger and the angst? We get to make this choice 6 days a week, and then come Friday, it's an even more important choice because it's going to set the tone for the Shabbat. We are commanded 12 times in Torah to observe Shabbat, and strangely, many of the instances come with an admonishment or a threat that if we don't obey, there will be punishment. Why on earth does God need to threaten us with capital punishment if we don't take a day of rest? Because how many of us actually take a day off where we don't check our work email? Thank you for the honesty of nearly zero hands up in the air. It's like we're allergic to taking care of ourselves. Why is it so hard for us to take a day of rest and delight? Why is it so hard for us to prioritize time with our family and our friends? Why is it hard for us to prioritize edification of the soul? Why don't we make time for intentional learning? Torah Lishma, just learning for its own sake because it's fun to learn new things. Because it's fun to develop our souls. Why do we not give ourselves the gift of coming to the synagogue, hanging out with our friends, building community, and engaging with our beautiful traditions, knowing we'll be walking out feeling better than when we walked in? Imagine how different things would be if we made this choice to begin every day with morning prayers and meditations of gratitude rather than doom scrolling and feeding our anger. Imagine if we said prayers of gratitude and sat outside with some coffee or tea and called a different long-lost friend each morning instead of listening to a bunch of random people yelling at each other on whatever network news we have running in the background mindlessly. Imagine Friday being a day of collecting a double portion of our manna and actually thinking ahead to Shabbat and preparing ourselves. Shabbat is coming. What am I going to do on Shabbat? I have so many choices in front of me. Maybe I'm going to go to Shabbat services because I love hanging out with our rabbis. They're really fun, nice, cool people. And I love hearing Michelle sing. I've never walked out in a worse mood than I walked in before. And if you have, give us a call. We'll talk. We'll work it out. Maybe after Shabbat, maybe I'm going to call some friends and say, come to Shabbat, and then let's go out to Shabbat dinner afterwards. You can go to DZ Aiken's, or you can go anywhere other than DZ Aiken's. You can go to a cone restaurant. Support local, independently owned restaurants. And then when you're there, you're going to think, why don't I do this more often? Maybe you're going to go to an Aztecs game because you want to support your local school and alma mater. And then you're going to think, you know what? Go Aztecs, but I should go to Torah study tomorrow morning. Because the basketball is amazing, but what have I done for my soul? What have I done for my Jewish mind to learn something new? What have I done to expand my horizons and sit in good company with good people? Maybe 9 a.m. is too early for you to get up on a Saturday morning, and so you're going to make it to services at 10:30. Everyone should be out of bed by 10:30 on Saturday morning, and you're going to come for our Saturday morning services, for beautiful morning services, and you're going to watch our amazing Team Awesome lead services, and you're going to think, there is a hopeful future. I don't have to be committed to doom and gloom, and there is a tomorrow, and everyone talks about supporting the youth, but how many of you are here on Saturday to actually do it? More of you should be. Barbara's here every Saturday morning. Go, Barbara. Frank's here every Saturday morning. Go, Frank. Frank's like, don't talk about it. Maybe it means making plans to not come to the temple, but to host a Shabbat dinner at your house with your old friends and your old chavurah, or with new friends, or with the people who just moved in down the street. I've got a million ideas for you, so call me later. Don't send me an email because I will never respond. 6 months later, right, Howard? 6 months later. 3 months later. But make it intentional time with our families, with our friends, deepening our soul. And when we do this on Shabbat, and we make it a regular practice, suddenly Sunday morning, maybe we have a greater desire to feed ourselves manna instead of garbage. And the more and more we feed ourselves manna and count our blessings, the less and less palatable the garbage becomes. And the less space we have for the anger. This is the gift that Shabbat offers us. But we have to choose to grab the lifeline. And why is it that God has to threaten us with capital punishment when we don't observe Shabbat? I like to say it's because it's a little prophetic moment. It's not actually that God is threatening us with capital punishment. It is a prophecy of what we are doing to ourselves. God doesn't need the community to stone us to death for violating Shabbat because we are destroying our own selves for not taking time to take care of ourselves. There's a reason the Hillel maxim begins with Im ein ani li mili. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? When we fail to take care of ourselves, when we are incapable of even taking one day to begin a personal practice of self-care, we are really taking a path of slowly letting our souls wither. We need to give ourselves the gift of allowing ourselves to nurture our minds, our bodies, and our souls, or we will become arid soil, where we are incapable of giving anything to anyone else. If we don't start taking care of ourselves, anger and schadenfreude will be the drugs our souls cling to just for the energy that they need to survive during these difficult days. And then who are we? We become people who hurl insults at people we don't know on social media. We become people who delight in or laugh about half of the list that Ezra Klein notated because we disagree with them. We become people who stop noticing that, like Pharaoh, our hearts are hardening. Although we have Shabbat and Jewish life and Jewish study on one hand, like Pharaoh, we become people who keep rehardening them by instead going back to the pool of awfulness and drinking deeply, never slaking the thirst as we become more and more sick. But we do not have to choose this path. And so I ask us, Sur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Rock of Israel, rise up and come to our aid, and may we rise up and meet you halfway, God. May we be willing to do this work that we need to do in this new year of 5786, to be willfully, hopefully, joyfully your partners, knowing that we cannot control what the rest of the world will or won't do. We can only control how we choose to shift our energy. May we shift that energy into celebration rather than denigration. May we shift our energy to passion and to rest and soul restoration rather than social media infestation. And may we move through this year with gratitude for our blessings as your partners in stewarding this world, with hope in our hearts, that we may long serve you and each other from a place of love and respect. We cannot stop this world from hurting our hearts, but may we strengthen our hearts to face this world with love, fierce tenacity, and a determination that this world can and must be a better place for the next generations to come. This same tenacity that has sustained our people through many a difficult day in generations prior to this one. And we will do with that together as the generations before us have done. Through the power of Jewish life and living Shabbat, we will be God's partners and make this world better than it currently is. May this be our will as it is yours, God. Amen.